Day 1194 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 988,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 1,230 in the past day. Then as for hardware, so 5 tanks, 4 APVs, 52 artillery, and probably a lot of aircraft. Because now we head to the very latest on the map, where a wave of Ukrainian FPV drones, UAVs, and other aerial platforms have smashed through Russia's air defenses in what's already been called the largest airstrike on the Russian Air Force since the full-scale invasion began. A coordinated strike on multiple airfields within Russia, 4 of them, including at Murmansk, Ryazan, Ivanovo, and Irkutsk, targeting Russia's military aircraft fleet, caused considerable amounts of damage, sending shockwaves all the way back to the Kremlin. Russian Tu-95 strategic strike aircraft are visibly on fire, with flames and black smoke billowing over the once secure runways deep inside Russian territory. Now, reports are flying in from every direction, which requires further confirmation, but with reports claiming up to 40 Russian military planes destroyed in a single coordinated wave, including prized assets like the A-50 early warning aircraft, but also Tu-22s, the long-range strike aircraft, and of course the iconic Tu-95s, the very backbone of Russia's nuclear and conventional air deterrence. As for the Belaya Airbase in the Irkutsk region, the Security Service of Ukraine was noted to have coordinated these attacks in real time, with operators piloting drones over 4,000 kilometers from Ukraine's border. For an airfield that is about 85 kilometers from the Irkutsk city, and fortress for Russia's strategic fleet, reportedly becoming a burning graveyard for some of Moscow's most advanced aircraft. But for this location, it's not just Tu-95s or Tu-22s, as satellite images confirm the Belaya airfield also hosts the Tu-160s and other aircraft like the IL-78s, AN-26s, the other transport including the AN-12s and the MiG-31 interceptors, all now in the crosshairs. Videos show burning hulks, massive explosions, and frantic Russian servicemen as black columns of smoke drift over Siberia. Meanwhile, Alenia Air Base in the far north Murmansk region also took heavy drone fire. The base is roughly 1,800 kilometers from Ukraine, hosting Tu-95s, Tu-160s, and Tu-22s equipped for long-range cruise missile strikes against Ukraine. Russians on the ground described a scene straight out of a disaster film, drones launched from trucks parked at local gas stations, one after another whizzing towards the base, as local traffic police scrambled and bystanders recorded the chaos. If that wasn't enough, the Ivanovo airbase, home to Russia's 114th Airborne Early Warning Regiment, was reportedly hit as well, with rumours swirling that another A-50 was struck, though official confirmation remains elusive so far. Then to the Ryazan airbase, another key Russian airfield, was also targeted, making for the last of the 4 strategic airfield sites hit within just hours. Talk about coordinated. Russian aviation channels are now openly comparing this day to Pearl Harbor, with some saying the Russian Air Force just experienced its most devastating loss since World War II. The damage could well be very historic, with hundreds of millions in military hardware destroyed in a single coordinated blow. Hundreds of millions would be a complete understatement. Initial reports said that something between 5 or 10% of the entire Tu-95 fleet is just gone, wiped out. But this figure could be even higher when the percentage represents their operational fleet numbers. Now, very difficult to confirm, but one latest report suggested that 27 Tu-95s were destroyed, which is a staggering and surely impossible number. But if true, it would represent about 30% of their fleet and maybe 50% or more of their actual operational fleet. Now, from these attacks, Russian media reports that the Kremlin has called an emergency meeting to address the disaster, but otherwise, so far, being silent on the matter. Now, as black smoke rises over the Murmansk and Irkutsk and Ryazan and Ivanovo air bases, the Irkutsk governor publicly admitted this was the first attack of its kind in Siberia, and ominously warned that it wouldn't be the last. For Moscow, this is humiliation on several levels. These air bases were considered untouchable, tucked far away from the front, protected by layers of air defense and Russian geography. The myth of sanctuary is shattered, with Russia's protective layers of air defense more so existing in the past than now, evidently becoming no match for this Ukrainian FPV storm. Footage from Russian telegram channels showed panicked soldiers and burning runways. The strategic impact cannot be overstated. Losing these long-range strike aircraft and AWACS aircraft, the big radar planes like the A-50, becomes a crippling blow to Russia's ability to project power and threaten Ukraine from afar. Ukrainian officials aren't gloating, but the message is unmistakable. Nowhere is safe, and there will be consequences for every missile strike launched at Ukrainian cities. And it's not just about what was destroyed, but it's also the new evolving threat capability that Ukraine has left in its mark today. Putting on display no intention of stagnating, always continuing with the technological innovation of their UAV platforms, leaving the expectation of a more vulnerable era for Russian air power. Though difficult to get a full assessment of the damage right now, in this fog of war environment, multiple sources really do seem to double down on 40, or rather over 40 Russian military aircraft as reportedly being destroyed or damaged across 4 separate targeted air bases. The impact of these events are likely to represent a significant blow to Russia's long-range aviation capabilities, potentially affecting its ability to conduct the aviation long-range missile strikes into Ukraine. Today's event, or series of events, might also go a long way to answer some of the common questions of why doesn't Ukraine just flat out swarm all of Russia's major air bases with their UAVs, and where it now appears that Ukraine is reaching this capability to do so. These are, militarily speaking, potentially very dangerous times for Russia. And now to a very brief look at the rest of the map today, as earlier today a giant blaze erupted at the Kolenzik factory in Krasnogorsk, just 10 kilometers from Putin's residence, sending thick smoke streaming across the Moscow skyline. Then to Bryansk and Kursk, where 2 significant bridge explosions occurred in Russia's border regions here. For Bryansk, a highway bridge collapsed, and then where hours later another bridge explosion in Kursk caused freight train debris to cascade onto a highway. And it is interesting because Russia's ready-made propaganda machine would likely be spinning up to blame Ukraine for these incidents, but it's not always the case. You don't have to dig deep for alternative explanations. Bridges in Russia have a long and almost proud history and tradition of falling down all on their own. For instance, the overpass in Smolensk dropped onto railway tracks back in April. Buryatia's river bridge caved last October after heavy rain and years of neglect. Before that, Zabalsky Krai, flooding and chronic maintenance failures washed away a key highway bridge, and the list goes on, for incidents that a lot of the time are starring shoddy constructions, missing funds, or good old-fashioned neglect. But these weren't the only Russian railway faux pas over the weekend, because adding to that, in the Komi Republic of Russia, a diesel locomotive with 2 wagons containing crushed stone derailed at the Shuvyu station of the Northern Railway. And would you believe it, that's not all for Russian railway, because in Zaporizhia, a Russian military train loaded with fuel and freight was targeted near Yamikivka in the Melitopol district of the occupied south overnight. The explosion sent the train off the tracks and down a slope, hitting a crucial Russian supply artery running from Melitopol toward Crimea. Partisan involvement is expected in this case, but also with working alongside Ukraine's HUR, its intelligence division. Now that rounds up most of the train incidents, so going back to Russia, where Ukrainian forces have kept up the pressure on Russia's arms industry, launching another wave of attack drones at the NPO Splav plant, a crucial hub behind some of Russia's most notorious rocket artillery, including the Grad, Smerch, and Uragan systems, with this event happening in Tula. Then, very briefly, back to the main map to list off a few brief points here, starting with Vovchansk, where the AFU reportedly advanced between Staretsia and Bagravata in this northern direction. Then further down the map, oh, and wouldn't you know it, even more hits to the lifeblood of the Russian war machine, as pro-Ukraine Atesh partisans show more of their activity of sabotaging a railway in Russian-occupied Donetsk, hitting a relay box on the new Volnovakha-Mariupol line, recently built by the occupiers, disrupting railway signals and traffic control. And for good reason, the railway is a key Russian supply route, delivering fuel, ammo, and gear right up to the front. By knocking it out, the partisans continue to claim they're making it harder for Moscow to move cargo fast, forcing riskier detours. Also on the Eastern Front, Ukrainian forces are engaged in multiple combat clashes with Russian troops, particularly in Pokrovsk, Toretsk, and the Lerman direction, with the AFU's top army chief, Alexander Sursky, reporting that Russian forces were focusing their main offensive efforts in these areas. As for Toretsk, there were some ISW reports on Ukrainian forces recently advancing near the town, and following on from that, the AFU, one of their brigades operating in this direction, taking another batch of Russian prisoners. 8 freshly minted POWs, to appear to be almost smiling. All of them will have a full belly tonight, and on the balance of probabilities, a much nicer place to sleep. Then further on the map and back to the south, as drones of the Belava unit hunted a Russian Zoopark 1 radar in the Novo-Papalivka direction. Another rare and expensive piece of equipment, a counter-battery unit, which costs about $10 million US dollars a piece. Then to the news, with today, 4 airbases, serious set of incidents that it was, and now becoming part of the backdrop leading into the Istanbul talks, the Istanbul peace talks tomorrow, June 2nd, and all eyes are on Russia's next move. But so far, radio silence from Moscow, because as of today, Ukraine has not yet received Russia's proposed peace memorandum ahead of the scheduled talks tomorrow. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Moscow of deliberately withholding the document, describing it as another deception aimed at undermining the negotiations. As for the latest on the Kremlin end, more mixed messages, with just yesterday, the Russian Foreign Ministry's press briefing release stating that Moscow rejects any mediation talks with Ukraine, and saying so at the time just 2 days out from mediation talks with Ukraine. After that, things heated up even further with Russian State Duma Defense Committee chairperson Andrei Kartapolov, who told Kremlin newswire TASS, quote, "If Ukraine refuses to negotiate, they'll end up losing everything. Zaporizhia, Dnipropetrovsk, Sumy, Kharkiv, and eventually even Odessa and Mykolaiv." End quote. So what we are really witnessing here is Russia revealing its strategic intentions through aggressive rhetoric. In this instance, Russia is making multiple heavy demands of Ukraine that are simply not realistic. They then use these disagreements from the Ukrainian side as justification to continue their invasion and expand their territorial claims inside of the sovereign defending country. Russia doesn't want peace. Russia wants Ukraine. Then to something different to round off the day today, guys. Not exactly funny or strange or the usual, but something that's possibly quite fitting and well-timed, where Zelensky and his wife visited the Book Arsenal, an annual international book festival held in Kyiv, and purchased the book To Kill a Tyrant, which tells the story of the removal of dictators from antiquity to the present day. I'm sure some would say that the book soon needs to be updated into a new edition about a falling Russian Federation. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers!